The UFL is finally underway. I have a few takeaways from week 1, and I'm going to talk about how these things could affect week 2 and beyond for the UFL. I'll share those with you. And we will check in with Reid Johnson from the Markcast and Sports Illustrated. He was at UFL kickoff between Birmingham and Arlington. First, some observations on week 1 and how it might affect the future. The San Antonio Brahmas, who I might have completely underestimated, pulled off one of the most amazing special teams touchdowns you will see. Punter Brad Wang to the center Alex Millette. Now, they admitted this was not the way this was supposed to go, but this play got plenty of attention nationwide, as did the Michigan Panthers' 64-yard game-winning field goal from Jake Bates to give his Panthers a win over the touchdown favorite St. Louis Battlehawks. Now, viewership on week 1 might not have been great because of Easter weekend. There was a plethora of other sports competing with the UFL opening weekend. But these viral moments can help boost the product for those who miss the games, and they might open the door for some more casual fans. While those scores went viral, there were some offenses that did not, for good reason, because in week 1, some of these offenses might have had a lot of us disappointed. But let's not hit the panic button just yet. Only Birmingham's offense topped the 300-yard mark. Let's remember one thing. With the merger and the reshuffling of rosters, opening weekend was really tantamount to preseason games. Now, there had been scrimmages, we do know that. But this was really the first time all 8 teams went full go 11 on 11. So as these teams begin to gel, the offenses for most teams will improve as the coaches and players get more of a feel for the systems. Finally, it was fitting that Arlington's Luis Perez threw the first touchdown in UFL history. Perez has the first touchdown in the 2022 USFL and the 2023 XFL. Unfortunately for Perez, he also threw what was pretty much the game-deciding interception to Mark Gilbert that led to that loss to Birmingham. Now, Perez was 19 of 28, 214 yards with a touchdown, so there's plenty to build on as the XFL champion MVP looks ahead to this weekend's game against an angry St. Louis Battlehawks team in one of the toughest environments in the league. Before we bring in Reid Johnson, just a quick word here about Royal Retros. They have a huge collection of alt football gear, from t-shirts to jerseys to hats, even more. Visit royalretros.com, use code JLS, and you will get 10% off your order. Let's bring in Reid Johnson now from Sports Illustrated and the Markcast. Reid, you were boots on the ground for the UFL opener there between Birmingham and Arlington. Tell me about your experience down there and, what was kind of the vibe in Arlington?
So it was a little bit of deja vu. Obviously, we were down there last year. We did our kickoff show for the XFL back in 2023. And so it felt a little, hey, let me, call the hotel people. Let me get set up again, kind of go through all the motions, know where the media. So that was, it was at least familiar in that way, if not odd, just because, you feel like we're kind of going through this again. Similar kind of buzz to last time. This time around, it was a major league opening weekend. So there was a lot of activity there for the Rangers, not necessarily for the Renegades. So that's always troubling to see. Last year when we were there in February, it was very, very sparse, except for, some people walking around. I know attendance was better this year. I think that they're saying that it was the highest attended at Choctaw since the 2020 season. I don't know if that's a historical benchmark that I would like to kind of focus on, but yeah, it was good. I mean, attendance was decent, and I know we're going to talk more about that, but I think we were all whelmed. I think we were whelmed, and then obviously we'll talk TV and all of that, but
right.
I'm feeling better today than I was. I was whelmed coming out of the weekend.
So not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, just the right amount of whelm for you.
Just the right amount.
Well, let's talk. We'll get into the attendance and the ratings, but I've kind of, after having some time to digest things a little bit and watch all these games, I felt like the theme, as it should be for an opening week for any league, especially, even though there's some history behind these two, but this is the first United Football League. Some takeaways I thought was, first of all, my question is, could this be a launch pad for something very special? And when I look at it, I think there were 3 things that I took away from this. There were the viral moments with the San Antonio special teams touchdown and the 64-yard kick, from Jake Bates that was the Michigan winner over St. Louis. So I thought that was probably a help to kind of get into the national consciousness, especially people who are, in social media. I also said that we don't need to panic with some of these offenses. It's going to come together, because when you have such a shuffle of rosters and personnel, and everybody's trying to get, and even coaches and people trying to get to a new system. This was like a preseason, really, this week one. I think the offenses will get a little better. And I still believe that Luis Perez can be the king of spring. His story, I think, still resonates. And when people pick up on that, I think they will be interested in him. Do you see any of that as maybe potential springboards for getting more people involved and to get more people interested in the United Football League?
I do. I think if you're with the UFL right now, I think this was a successful weekend, right?
Yeah.
The challenging thing about spring football is only having 4 games a weekend, right? There's
Right.
always going to be 1 or 2 that aren't necessarily up to snuff. The CFL deals with that a lot. Obviously, the
Yeah.
NFL, we can bury games on, the 10 a.m. window or whatever, on the West
Right.
Coast. But, I would say 75%, 80%. The beginning of the Michigan game was a little slow. Everyone forgets that now, right? Because of the field goal kick at the end. So I think the play was good. And I agree with you, having at least the one viral moment each day, because it was such a busy sports weekend with Caitlin Clark playing, and you had the baseball.
Right.
I mean, literally across the street. And,
Right.
even just the whole idea of Easter weekend and spring, and some people are already going on spring break and some people are coming home. I mean, our spring break is next week. I can't stand these these rolling spring breaks with all this
Right.
stuff. But the point is, there's a lot going on. Ratings were good, and like I said,
Mhm.
there was at least enough click moments that you could upload on social from each of the games for the weekend. I thought it was enough that I think people will tune back in now, and I especially think people will tune back in once kind of the March Madness of it all rolls on, and there is kind of that lull before you get to anything this summer.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about it on the Markcast, about how social media is very important, and some are better than others, but it really gets the message out there.
Whoever they have doing social media now, and I think this obviously must be part of the Fox doing it, clipping the game highlights
Yeah,
and uploading them immediately during the
yeah,
game. Because I said this story on I think it was our recap show here, but when I was in Seattle, I would attend Seattle in the stands. I would attend it in the press box because I wanted to enjoy the game. I would see the social media person go take a video, record the touchdown, come back over, put the card in, edit it on the laptop, on the
right.
sideline, upload it, and then go back, which is great, right? And you still need, right? They're still shooting, and Leah and all the people, I know Jay Noakes, all the people with
Yeah,
all the social, but you need to have someone back at mission control. And I thought all weekend, because I was traveling, obviously going to the main game, and then we're trying to get done with all of our work for the Saturday game, and then traveling back day all day Sunday, watching the game at the airport and on the plane. I felt like I was able to stay up to date the
yeah,
whole time with social media clips that I was not able to do last year. I mean, there would be games that were halfway through last year, they wouldn't have even had a single highlight posted. So if that is
yeah.
part of like this synergy that we have going on with Fox, and they have those people running, whoever's doing that is a tremendous job.
Yeah, I think that is super important, especially, we have talked so much about the casual fan. I think the casual fan is going to be very important. We're going to watch no matter what, but you got to bring people in. You touched on it. Speaking of bringing people in, you touched on it with the ratings. St. Louis, Michigan, on Fox, that was the number one of the UFL in ratings, 1.3 million. Birmingham at Arlington, another Fox on Saturday, 1.18 million. It dropped on Easter Sunday, because we talked about there was so much going on, and before I brought you in, I talked about how the ratings might not be great. Um, I think, but I think it's a success, because on ESPN, 960,000 for DC, San Antonio, Memphis, and Houston, 703,000. But when you look at, comparison is the thief of joy. But when you start talking about ratings, there's a reason we have ratings numbers, and you have to compare. The number one sporting event was NC State Duke, which was Sunday afternoon, Easter Sunday, 15.1 million on CBS. Now, so there's that much competition. And, you brought up the Elite Eight, Colorado, Iowa women on ABC, 6.9 million. I think that when we see those numbers around a million, to me, with everything going on, that is successful, but I think they could be better as we move along. and move out of opening weekend of baseball and move away from the NCAA tournament. Do you agree?
I was very scared for the
Yeah.
ratings, candidly. And Mike Mitchell had
Yeah.
posted, he writes for SI, and
Mhm.
he had said, he was predicting a high water mark of 900,000 on the Fox games. I had seen people in our Facebook group hoping, million plus, 1,500,000. I thought that was field dream, right? I thought there was no way it would hit that. I think what this shows is, even with all the competition, network time slots, right? What the broadcast window you're on, the network you're on is huge. We talked with Ben Fisher last year with the Sports Business Journal about that as well, that it didn't really matter if it was XFL or USFL. Whatever was going to air in the best time slot was going to win the weekend. I have a tweet here just to put a little more context in it from Mike Mobile Hill. I can never say his name. He's with Fox and Fox Sports, talking about kind of the consolidation, right? Where we're able to give the best windows here for both Fox and ESPN. The Fox games were 45% better on average of all the games that they had last year, 45% better. And then the ESPN games were 91% better than the average of all the USFL and XFL games last year. So already we're kind of seeing that pay dividends. I don't think that there was any tremendous work done in terms of marketing the league, kind of promoting the league ahead of time. I just think these games are on better windows, and because of that, more people are finding it. I don't think it was not that they did anything to take anything away with the promotion or anything, but I don't think there was some overwhelming promotion that got people to watch this. I think they're like, oh, I got Fox on at 1:00. There's football on. I go to the bars. It's easier. Hey, the game's already on. I don't have to watch, I don't have to ask for the game. Oh, do you have ESPN2? Do you have FS2? Do you have Peacock? Do you have,
Right.
Going in, you sit down at any sports bar, a TV is going to be turned to Fox, to ABC, to ESPN. It just makes it so much more. And I'm sitting there at the bar at the airport. People are, they don't even know, oh, I'm just watching the TV. It's on. So I think that carries a lot of it. But if that's the benefit of this merger, then I think that's great.
That's I was at my in-laws on Sunday, and I was like, I just want to peek at something here on television. And my father-in-law, he's a big NASCAR fan, but so he's like, what is the UFL? So he is a sports guy, but it still needs to reach more people. And some of the promotion that we saw, man, can you imagine, like, if the Super Bowl had been on, if it had been on Fox, that you probably would have seen a lot more and maybe brought some more people in. But I think you're right. When you start seeing these, and I think this is going to be universal. I think it was with the XFL and with the USFL. When you put these games on network television, it's going to boost the numbers. You talked about the attendance. You did attend the highest attended game at Birmingham at Arlington, 14,000. San Antonio had 13,000. St. Louis at Michigan, it looks a little rough when you only have about 9,400 people at Ford Field. And then Memphis at Houston, 9,100 there. Were any of those red flags for you when you saw those final numbers?
It's really hard this weekend with it being Easter, right? I think Sunday, to me, I wouldn't take anything out of the Sunday one at all, just because it's Easter Sunday. If anything, the ratings are going to be higher because we're going to be sitting, we're coming home from church, we're coming home from dinner, we're going to be watching the games that way.
Yeah.
To me, what it speaks to is it was the Friday of kickoff weekend, and that report came out, the UFL is trademarking all these new, and where are we going to go next? And people, it's such this sugar rush of like, where are we going to expand? Who need to expand? There was 9,400 people in Michigan. They had football there last year, right? And then there was another 9,100 in Houston, where obviously it's a different team, same name, different stadium, but still, they've had football there. Like, we need to focus on these markets before we work on anything else, right? Nothing was alarming. I credit getting, 9,400, getting 9,100, but we got to work on this before we're dealing with the Nashville Tuners or whatever we're talking about, these trademarks. Right. I mean, even going back to Canton, like, I think Canton proved, and unbeknownst to me, I thought that would work, right? Pair that with the Hall of Fame, have games running. People are going on Saturday. We'll go to the game. It didn't work. It doesn't draw. It's not for whatever reason, they weren't able to translate that. So let's get these markets going. I think you need, and who knows what the agreements were with the government in terms of like getting this merger approved, and we need to try to work on these markets. But I think you got to do 2 years in these before you even think about anything. I can't get my head around trying to expand when we're still hovering at this.
Well, it seems like that's, I remember, even all the way back to 2001 with the original XFL. Halfway through the season, not even halfway, because that's when it really started to take a dip, but even, 2 or 3 weeks in, because it was a huge success starting out ratings wise and everything else because of the curiosity factor. But, they started talking about, now there could be expansion and all this stuff. And it's like, you get through a season first, get to the championship game. It's funny. And, to that point, as far as the ratings go, I want to throw out a first week rating of a new league because you can go back because there's a curiosity factor and it's usually on network. We saw that with the Alliance of American Football that got an incredible, millions of people who watched that first game on CBS, but then it was hard to find. So many things happened. It's well documented. But this year I almost want to throw them out because, as we continue to say here, the NCAA tournament, Easter, so many things that were going on. I will be interested to see what happens next week, and especially what happens the week after into the third week, because then that's when, there's not a lot of sports competition. God bless baseball, but it's not getting the ratings that it used to. So here's a real chance, I think, again, which is why we have spring football, is to fill that niche with some sports.
Well, and I think the games were, for the most part, good, right? I mean, they
Yes.
were it wasn't anything that would turn anybody off. Again, I know that Michigan game, and God knows, I mean, that one peaked the highest of anything, right? As people were watching the game. Because again, I think people are just creatures of habit. Okay, Fox is on, it's on, 48% of households in America, whatever they're going to watch. But the games were decent, where I thought with the USFL 2 years ago, they had that really good first kickoff game. 2 of the other games that weekend, because I thought the reduced preseason weren't as good. And then they had the rain delay where they had to push the one to Monday, and that tanked that rating as well. So I think with these, you had 4 games that were solid. All these time slots are, good. They're all Saturday, Sunday. I know we have a couple of those regional games that people are complaining about, but I think that allows them to, kind of play around and see, okay, do we want to try to do something like this in the future? But I also think that helps boost the numbers of, we have X number of games on Fox, even if a couple of those are competing against each other. To me, it feels like they've learned that people don't care like what the letters are on the field, right? Or necessarily for the casual, right? What is, we're just trying to get anybody, Billy and June and everyone, we just need anyone to kind of watch this stuff. And we're just going to put it on TV where people know they can find it. At this point, people are not going to FX at 7:00 on a Thursday night or whatever to watch this. They're watching it where it's convenient. And so I think that they've at least realized that, because that was very striking to me last year when Ben Fisher, we poured through all the numbers. I think it was halfway through the season. He's like, there's really no discernible difference here except the slots that they're on. Like, I don't think anyone in the world is watching one more than the other because of, they have the extra XFL kickoff or they have the USFL kickoff or whatever.
No, I think that's a good point. You talk about the time slots, and it's really going to be interesting this weekend where you have, I just hate that it's going up against the Final Four, because you're going to have a primetime game on ABC with Arlington, the XFL champion, at St. Louis, the best environment that there is that will be in the UFL. What do you think you will take away from that? And is that something you think that they probably should? I'll say, I wish they would have scheduled that the third week rather than against the Final Four.
Yeah, again, candidly, I also don't think that matchups mean that much when it comes to the broad TV ratings. I don't. Right. And I remember last year, because people would pull like, oh, well, this USFL game, like, they're still in playoff contention, and this one they're not, and this one, this team's 1-7, and this, like, generally speaking, within the margin of error, a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. So, like, for you and me, we're going to watch it anyway, or record or do whatever. I'm not the biggest, which is weird because I went to Gonzaga, and we're out of everything now, but I'm not the biggest, March Madness person anyway, just because of like past shock trauma and everything. But I would say generally my message to anyone listening is, as much as you think matchups matter when it comes to these ratings, history shows they really don't. Right. Like that, the Michigan Battlehawks game was not that great. That was the worst game of the 4, and it rated the best because that was the better time slot on Saturday.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard for me sometimes to break out of that bubble, because you're right. It's like, our mentality is different. And let's not forget, I think if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to go back and look. One of the highest rated XFL games was an Orlando game because it was on network television. And that was when Orlando, who started off sucking and continued to suck the entire year, they were on network television and got a good number. You're right. I don't think it matters as
I
far as that.
Yeah, and I will say, and this is to the besmirchment of kind of us and podcasting about ratings and kind of riding this whole thing. I thought Daryl Johnson was on the show 2 weeks
Yep.
ago before the kickoff, and I think that they are very understanding of what the ratings are going to be this year. I think that they have very not like somber expectations, but I think they have very realistic. Unlike I think the USFL 2 years ago came out and thought they were going to get shot out of a cannon, and then last year I think they thought that they were going to kind of BD on everybody and not hey, we don't need to worry about all this stuff. I think there's been humbling all around. I remember talking back with someone letting me know that season ticket sellers for the XFL are like, oh, we're competing like a top 5, top 6 sports brand here in America, and it's like, you're not, so I think that everybody involved in this, because again, I go back and just to be rambling on this, I go back, I remember hey, we're podcasting about the XFL. I'm going to post a video up on YouTube and I'm going to get 20,000 views because people are so interested in all this stuff. And then you realize very quickly how niche all of this is.
Yeah.
So I think they've all been humbled through this process. I think it's taken a couple years to get everybody onto this. I thought The Rock was a lot less bombastic this year, at the kickoff when he was still there and he had the tank top and all of that. But, it felt like it was kind of a moment last year. And it feels like, okay, we're a little bit more kind of, we know where we're at now in the landscape.
Yeah. Well, and you bring that up. Your interview with Daryl Johnston was great because he didn't sugarcoat anything. And I thought he was very realistic, as you mentioned, about, really wanting to put this together and didn't try to put really any spin on it. He said, hey, listen, the reason we're kicking off on Easter weekend is because that's when we figured it out. And we were just trying to get this thing off the ground. Were you surprised, though, that you didn't see Daryl Johnston this weekend, or at least I didn't see him?
He was in Houston. I saw photos of him on the sideline. So he was there because I was scared that I was going to run into him in the press box. And then it was going to be because I think some of the comments I had made about the transparency of the league, I was not, it was
about the injury reports. Right?
Yeah, it was not it was more in enjoyment of Daryl Johnston wanting the teams to be more transparent with all of that.
Right.
But I think it's all been humbling across the board. And I think that I will say the one thing, and I said this on our live show for the kickoff when we were there, just because their expectations are low, I don't want that to settle into some sort of like, well, we're fine now with this, right? I want, because when you have high expectations, you don't hit that, then you're upset, right? And I think obviously, personalities were humbled and egos and all of this, and I'm sure having to come together and shake hands when they didn't want to do all this, but I don't want them now just having lower expectations or like knowing where it's going to hit to not. We still need to be pushing here now moving forward, because I don't want, I've heard it too many times. Like, we just need to get through. Reid, we got to just get through this training camp. Next year, we're going to do better with interviews. Reid, we just need to get through this supplemental draft. Next time, we're going to do more. We just need to get through the kickoff. Like, it's always, we just need to get through. And I want, like, no, we need to be building here even though we're getting through this, if that makes sense.
Reid, we talked about what the optics of Ford Field and, having 9,400 people there. And now you have Michigan at home again this weekend. Expectations there. I'm really hoping to see it, at least 10 or 11,000 there. Even you're in a huge NFL stadium, but you got to have a few more people in there for good optics.
It's tough because Michigan wasn't good last year. They especially weren't good at home last year. I think Michigan sports, fans are probably a little apathetic at this point. I know the Lions are getting better now. I think that also hurts, right? That like, okay, we have a good team that we don't necessarily need to invest in the Panthers. But I don't know. I remember Tony Paul. I mean, I follow a lot of the Detroit guys. I think Bill Shea's in Detroit as well. Like, you're covering this as kind of a novelty, right? This isn't and we talked offline about some of the stuff in Arlington and trying to incentivize media in Arlington to come out and cover this, but you're still asking these traditional media people to buy into this. And so I don't know. I don't think Michigan, even though they had the historic field goal kick all there at the end and made a lot of news that way, that team didn't necessarily play well up until that point. I don't think they have their quarterback situation figured out. So yeah, I mean the team won, right? I mean they're 1-0, but I don't know if that's enough to we're going to come out in droves now in Michigan to support this. It wasn't a particularly strong market last year. And I think we're also seeing that with a lot of the USFL markets, right? We'll see how Memphis is going. I've heard that ticket sales are slow there. I know that they're doing some rally thing I posted today. You get $10 tickets. We're trying to get people in the door. Because people got to remember, we're not selling tickets here to make money. I mean, we're selling tickets to get people in. It's a little bit of that USFL. It just needs to be a TV show to get people. I mean, yes, it's nice to sell merch and kind of get some concessions, but Memphis is hard. Michigan's hard. We'll see what Birmingham looks like. And then obviously Houston, we've already seen. And that's, we had comments on our show okay, well, we went from the best team in the league. Now we're in the USFL. We have a totally different coaching staff. We have a totally different, our quarterback stinks. We don't have that. Why am I supposed to support that? Where, the Brahmas got better in the merger. They got Wade Phillips and AJ Smith and Chase Garbers now, I guess, is the next coming of, John Elway or whatever. But it's just, these USFL markets were not the strongest to begin with. And so now, you're putting them up against, they get 40,000 in St. Louis, or you get 22, whatever the capacity is in DC. Michigan's going to look, not as good compared to that. So I think you're going to see some flexing from some of the, I mean, I know the USFL went 2-0, in the conference battles and all that stuff, which I have my own thoughts about, but I think attendance wise this weekend, you'll see the XFL kind of step out.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is because people will talk about, the average attendance is whatever. DC's at home, St. Louis is at home. That average is going to go way up. And you're St. Louis. I mean, you're San Antonio Brahmas, unless they go on a 9-game winning streak. I really, really underestimated them because I picked them 1-9. And someone texted me, I won't mention who it is. It was Reid, who's like, "Are you insane? 1 win."
And then I texted you this weekend. I said, boy, aren't you feeling foolish right now? So
and I said, I told you, Chase Garber's MVP.
Wow, just wait. We're gonna have the game-winning field goal opportunity with destroying, and we'll see how that works out. So,
I think we all cannot wait for that. Reid Johnson, you catch him on the Markcast on YouTube, podcast, does all the social media. One of the best accounts out there, and one of the best guys out there to talk UFL with. Appreciate you, Reid.
Thanks.